So what's going on, guys? It is TCG Nistro here with Ground Game, and we are here with our guest Roarkallos doing a GG Metacast, which we haven't done in a while, but we've done some restructuring and we're going to get back into the content pretty soon. We wanted to get a guest who's very familiar with Tearlaments and their research in the TCG. Introductions are in place. First off, we do have Isaiah Houston on the Metacast. He's usually here. He's like the heart of this channel, and we have Roarkallos as well, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am a content creator, a Twitch streamer specifically. I stream over at twitch.tv/Roarkallos. Most people know me as Roark or Roarkallos, and I am a member as well as a big fan of the ground gaming community.
Okay. And what is your favorite deck?
My favorite deck is Tearlament.
That's it's very much a core part of your online presence, and so it's really an honor to get to talk to you on this Metacast. And we're just gonna get right into some of the questions, and just really quick. I want to talk about your recent tournament experiences, like nationals or any recent event that you've been to. How has YuGiOh been for you recently?
So this past format, before the Banlist, involved a lot of traveling. I did attend YCS Vancouver. For that event, I played a version of Labyrinth that I call Trap Toolbox. So I was less focused on IKEA and more focused on trap cards because I felt they had a better matchup spread into that format. I actually happened to do pretty well at the event. I did make it to day 2. And then the morning of day 2, I showed up late because day 2 started at 9 a.m. and I thought it started at 10 a.m. since day 1 started at 10 a.m. Yeah. So I missed round 9, which was unfortunate. But it's no big deal. We moved past it. As far as the deck's performance goes, I think it was a fantastic meta call to have made. And my deck's biggest weakness for that event was actually time. Because I wasn't playing like anything for time, and when you're playing a slower, more control deck like that, especially if you lose game 1, it's very easy to either lose or just draw in game 3. So that was that deck's weakness. But then a few days after that, maybe like a week later, we had the Banlist announced, and that completely changed the format because now a pesky little guy by the name of Arise Heart is no longer around. And ever since that card got banned, I've been back to my roots playing good old Tearlament. And I've taken it to just kind of like locals. I haven't done any major events with it yet, but I did successfully manage to win a VIP qualifier in Chicago with Tearlament. So I will be a VIP at YCS Indianapolis, which is coming up in 2 weeks.
Okay. Sounds great. Well, you did just mention the ban list. Are you happy that Arise Heart's gone? Like, is this change in the meta something that you really enjoyed, or do you wish like Kashtira was still a viable deck post ban list?
I have a bit of a mixed opinion on it. On one hand, I am very glad to see Arise Heart gone because it is a very centralizing floodgate. It's an incredibly strong monster. However, the way that Kashtira is hit, I was not a big fan of it because I guess you can think of it as me sympathizing with my enemy. I don't like it when a deck's kind of like identity is banned, like titular boss monster is banned. I prefer it when we can like curb a deck's power level without like getting rid of their identity. And I think that if you ban Arise Heart, Kashtira is kind of left as like this empty shell almost. That being said, at the end of the day, I'm still happy that Arise Heart is banned. The card was incredibly toxic. So
yeah, I mean, most of Kashtira's meta identity was being toxic. Diablosis, Zone Lock, Walking Macrocosmos, endless resource loop. Like it was crazy. Hand traps. Don't even get me started. But
right.
Yeah, I can definitely understand. You kind of want like an even playing field, and I feel like there probably was a way that Konami could have balanced it better than just outright banning Arise Heart. Now that we've come into this sort of flux of a format where a lot of things are topping, it's a very open format. Now Tearlament is back in the top tables again. It's not just like somewhat around like it was in Nationals and a few other events in the past formats. Like now it's like on the front of everyone's mind when they're going into an event. I kind of want to ask you a few questions about the difference between how TCG has had Tearlaments sort of come in and out of formats, and how OCG has kind of had it be a consistent topper no matter how it was hit. So, like, what do you think is the biggest difference between TCG and OCG? Is it just that Arise Heart got banned, so now the deck is good again? Or is there something more to it about, like, the OCG side of things?
So I think that the main difference between the history of Tearlament and the OCG and the TCG is that when Tearlament was eventually hit in the TCG, they only hit Tearlament. Nothing else was hit alongside with it, particularly Bestials and any Kashtira card. All of those cards remained effectively at full power. And it made it very oppressive to try to play Tearlament in those formats. On the other hand, in the OCG, when Tearlament was, and Tearlaments had a few ban lists, but the one that really kind of massacred Tearlament in the OCG, that ban list also limited, I believe, Fenrir and Unicorn, and limited every single Bestial, except for, I think, one of them, which was either Baldrake or Serenir. But Druisworm, Magnamut, and Bestial Lubellion were all limited alongside of it. This sort of made it so that even though Tearlament was at a much lower power level, all of the other decks were also at a lower power level. The efficient engines and the efficient non-engine that handles Tearlament was curbed in such a way that other decks really couldn't compete with Tear when it would spiral, when it would start to snowball. So for this reason, I think that's why Tearlament enjoyed so much longevity in the OCG compared to the TCG. A longevity that it seems to have finally had its final nail in the coffin, because I believe that ever since the last OCG ban list, Tear is effectively gone from the metagame. Whereas now, we finally hit Magnamut to 1, which is not enough, but it's a start. And we banned the Rise Heart, so a problematic card is also out of the format. And now we're seeing like, okay, well, this deck was always good. You know, the builds of Tearlament that people are playing right now are the same as the builds of Tearlament that I was playing in February and March, when I was stubbornly refusing to let go of the deck. And the deck is still just as good, but now its hard counters and efficient non-engine are no longer as prevalent or even around whatsoever. And people are starting to see like, oh, this deck can still hang.
Yeah. Shit. Yeah, I just started scrolling just to make sure that Tearlament wasn't actually still doing anything in OCG, and yeah, it seems like Rescue Ace has completely taken over there. And so, as a Tearlament player yourself, experienced this like roller coaster of it being like meta, to it being more of a rogue option, to it being somewhat usable, to then it being good again now. It's like, how has that affected your want to like play the game, your want to go to events and such like that?
It's funny, Tearlament is such like an important part of like just my identity and my like as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, my journey really. And to answer that question, I think it's best for me to say like my experience that I had after playing Tearlament again after the ban list, you know, taking it to that VIP qualifier. The day afterwards, I called my friend and I said, I feel like a different person playing this deck.
Oh my god.
Like, it just feels so good. And I hate to attribute my enjoyment of the game to my ability to play a singular deck. I don't think that's very healthy. But
no, I think there's an argument that it is.
Yeah, there's an argument that it is. But basically, what I'm trying to say is like, I love the game a lot more when I can play Tearlament. And so having gone through this roller coaster, it's almost like it's made me, you don't know what you have until it's gone. And I got to experience like Tearlament being gone. And now I get to experience Tearlament being back. And I love it.
Not to get too philosophical, but I think it's everyone's personal responsibility to find what makes them happy in life. And I've, come to understand myself that what makes me happy in Yu-Gi-Oh is playing strategies that allow me to do the things that I want to do, right? So the reason why I like Rescue Ace so much is because it's fun not to just summon Turbulence and set 4 from deck, which is hilarious, because what is my opponent supposed to do about that? When they try to imper me and I have the Book of Moon. But also like things like when I was able to play Ignites again, and they got the Draco Slayer support. Like, I like being able to turn those normal monster pendulums into something that actually works and turn it into any kind of deck that I like. Like the new support for reptiles out of Age of Overlord. There's a bunch of different ways you can play the Ogdoadic deck, but I love that, I have those options to either Planet Virus you and be one of the most toxic cards in the game, or one of the most toxic strategies in the game, or search a counter trap, search a continuous trap with, one of the cards out of Photon Hypernova. It's like, I find the happiness in playing the game when I'm allowed to play strategies that let me do what I like doing. So I think there's nothing wrong with you saying like Tearlaments is what makes you enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh, because I think that's sort of like inherent. If you enjoy the playstyle, you will be drawn to it, and I think like that's the most important thing, because we're not making any money out of this. So
Right.
the most you can get out of this is a good time, and whatever gives you a good time should be what you aim to play or go for in your Yu-Gi-Oh journey.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
So that being said, there's a lot of people now who don't want to play against Tearlaments. So I know you were just at a remote YCS. Did you get to feel any resentment from your opponents that you were on tier? Is there any, what's the word here? Like what happened with Kashtira?
In the VIP qualifier, it wasn't a remote YCS. But in the VIP qualifier, I didn't face any resentment with playing Tearlament. A lot of people, because it was so soon after the ban list, were just kind of like excited to see it again.
Right.
And there were people crowding around me at table one, kind of looking at what I was doing, thinking like, wow, this deck still like it still has it, like they're doing it without Kid Kalos, and this is really crazy. And I think in general there was excitement, but I am definitely noticing that ever since the ban list, as more people have started to play it, that excitement is kind of winding down, and it's starting to, and in its place is being taken over by resentment.
Okay.
And so there's definitely like a sentiment in the community right now to where like Tearlament is a lucky deck, right? It's a sacky deck. If you mill well, you will win, and if you don't mill well, you won't win. And it's less onto the skill of the player and more onto like the luck sack of your mills. So to address like a sentiment like this, I would actually say that I don't entirely disagree. One of the reasons why I would, as a competitive player, putting aside my identity, but as a competitive player, why I may choose not to bring Tearlament to an event, this coming format or this current format, is the deck definitely has a lot less agency than it used to. And one of the cards that gave the deck so much player agency was Kid Kalos, because it was kind of your avenue of ensuring that you didn't need luck. Kid Kalos really is like the glue that removes luck from the equation and allows for a lot more skill expression. As the deck is right now, you will have games that you lost, even if you played very well, simply because you didn't mill well. You will have games that you win that you maybe shouldn't have won, but it doesn't matter because you milled very well. And I think that competitive players really value agency when they're playing a deck, and Tearlament is not right now in a position that really offers that, at least in its play style. That being said, I think it does to an extent. I think Tearlament still has a lot of agency. I think it still has a lot of room for technical play. It's important for both sides of the argument to kind of see where each other are coming from, right? So like, yeah. I will concede that sometimes the deck can win off of a very lucky Hofness. But at the same time, it is not 100% a luck deck. There are a lot of cards that we play, and particularly in our deck building, that improve the chances of us milling well or remove the chances altogether. For example, employing cards like Beatrice, which remove the RNG off milling altogether. There's a lot that the deck can do, and I think that is where I have the most fun, because once you start milling, not only are you constantly surprised, it's like, ooh, I milled this. Now this opens up a new play that I didn't have in mind. But also, every single card that's in the graveyard is an extension of your plays, and it's an extension of your hand. And the decision trees that arise after you see your mills are where the deck skill expression really shines.
Right. I gotta say, complaining about Tearlaments kind of just sounds like skill issue to me. Like, the deck just doesn't feel, it's nowhere near as oppressive as it used to be. And
it's not.
We have plenty of answers in modern game to deal with it. So I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm playing Rescue Ace and I'm playing a deck that's more capable this format. So maybe it's like I'm not as worried about it. But yeah, it just sounds like a skill issue.
Hmm.
Personally, I know you got a little bit into deck building theory, so I want to ask you about ratios in Tearlaments. A lot of people seem to be playing different builds, and if you look at, I forgot the name of the event,
Dortmund.
Dortmund,
Dortmund.
there you
Yeah.
go. You look at like the list in top 8, it's like no Fenrir, no King of the Swamp, and then you look at top 32, it's like King of the Swamp. Then you look at another top 32, Fenrir, but no King of the Swamp. It's like everyone's doing their own different thing. So how do you feel about the versatility in tournaments right now? Do you think that's like a strength of the deck, or do you think there is a correct answer right now and we just haven't found it yet?
There's definitely versatility, and there's definitely room for player expression in deck building with Tearlament, but I will say there is not a lot of room for it. I think if you like boil down a Tearlament deck to its parts that are non-negotiables, you actually don't have a lot of room left over. It's not like we can have like vast differences in deck building. Even like generally speaking, the differences are come down to either like 3 to 6 cards and usually no more than that. But that being said, there is, as you mentioned, there has been a lot of variation in those 3 to 6 cards. Fenrir, Shadal's, Destiny Heroes, King of the Swamps, etc. I can't say if there is a correct answer or not. It's really kind of player preference and meta calls. Take, for example, myself, I'm still a fan of Fenrir. I still really appreciate it as a going second card, and I really appreciate it as a going first card in this deck. I am somebody that maxes out on Rhino Hearts, and that's not something everybody's doing. Some people are preferring
Right.
Diviner, but I prefer Rhino Heart because it's a Tearlament name. I do not like King of the Swamp whatsoever. I think that card was one of the most major contributors to bricked hands, and one of the reasons why I never considered not playing it was because I felt like the deck needed to play it. Once you start supplementing it with like Destiny Heroes, Shadal cards, and a more robust Link and Exceeds package, you start to realize that your fusions don't have to be end boards. Your fusions can be combo pieces to get to your end board. And I prefer that style of playing the deck a lot better. And also, it's just nice to not be so reliant on like, oh, I really hope I hit King of the Swamp or else I can't do anything.
In a Tearlament deck, considering that it's a deck based, especially now, around milling and the luck factor, quote unquote, as people like to say, how do you calculate the ratios of some of the cards that you're playing, like your normal summons or the cards that you want to mill, the dangers, the tier cash, the tier names, well, not tier names, the other tier cards, like the spells and traps. Like, how do you get to the number you should be playing of each card?
Of course. So what generally speaking, when you do deck building with milling in mind, it's a lot more difficult than doing it with just like an opening hand in mind. It's like the probability calculator just gets exponentially more complicated when you consider the fact that cards that you see in your graveyard are also cards that you see in your hand now. It's your second hand, right? That's where the expression is.
Right.
But the question that I always ask myself with regards to certain cards is how versatile are they? How impactful are they in the hand and in the graveyard? One card, for example, right now that I am not playing is Terraforming. And the reason why I'm not playing Terraforming is because Terraforming is an awful mill, doesn't do anything in the graveyard. As far as Terraforming strength in the hand, it's incredibly strong in the hand because it gets me Perla Rhino. And Perla Rhino is one of the best field spells ever printed.
Right.
However, I have other cards that can also get me to Perla Rhino. So, Trivi Karma is one of them, where if you draw it, it's not that great, but you have ways to discard it. And if you mill it, it can convert into planet. So then I have to ask myself, like, is it worth to play a consistency card like Terraforming, which is such a bad mill? Or should I instead play something like Trivi Karma instead? And the reason why I bring up Terraforming is because right now there are 3 major like consistency spells that I play, which are Card Destruction, Foolish Burial, and Foolish Burial Goods. And I play each one of them in my list at 1. Ultimately, I had space for like 3 power spells, so to speak. And of the 4 power spells that I was considering, Card Destruction, Foolish Goods, and Terraforming was the least versatile. Terraforming is only planet. Foolish is any monster in my deck sent to the graveyard. Foolish Goods is any spell card or trap card that I want in my deck thanks to Trivi Karma. And Card Destruction...
Right.
I don't need to explain how good card destruction is.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of decision tree that I think about when I'm deciding on like a card to play is how good is it in the hand? How good is it in the graveyard? If it's extremely good in the hand, then it can justify its position as being in the deck. But, for the most part, I think generally I prioritize cards that are both good mills and good in the hand. So for cards like that could be like Fenrir is not the worst mill, so because it can be banished off to your cache, for example.
Right, and it's also a really awesome draw.
It's also a really awesome draw, right? Yeah.
I actually don't like card destruction that much, and I was just listening a little bit.
Mhm.
I wanted to say that.
It's like I think the card destruction is getting riskier with more people playing
Moving
like graveyard based strategies. And Dark World too.
Yeah.
Especially with like the mirror match with Dark Worlds.
Yeah.
Like I even played like a game and I drew my opponent into Bestials. And I'm like, oh, it's one game, but I think that's more of the reason why I don't like it, because I'm like drawing my opponent into different cards. Like it's an interesting card.
Yeah.
Maybe max out on triple tactics if you're playing card destruction.
That actually is a card that I'm playing. Yeah, triple tack is kind of like my main choice of non-engine right now. And at the moment, I'm trying out because I wasn't playing card destruction for that reason, Isaiah. I was like, oof, what if I'm playing a mirror match? It's like this could end very badly. Ultimately, I decided to put it in my deck, and I've been liking it, particularly as a card that you can grab off triple tactics thrust post side.
I mean, that's only half the battle, right? Like if we're milling 5, like we're just always gonna mill 5, right? It's like even if we're playing the mirror or not, right?
Right.
He's not gonna mill 5. Similar thing with card destruction is just card destruction is actually a neg 1 in a sense. Obviously, like you can like mill certain stuff and maybe recover from that, and it's actually a plus for your opponent. So it's a weird card. I don't think that it's bad to play. I just think it's interesting. I know you did mention talents, and I see some lists. Another besides the Fenrir, one thing that kind of juggled between lists was talents in the main or side, or super poly in the main or side. So I thought that everything depends on the format. I was like with super poly in the main. Also controversial. I was never too big of a fan of talents either. What was your thought? Obviously, you like talents better. Are you even playing super poly at all?
I actually took out super poly. I found that with the format being so diverse, a lot of end boards that I was dealing with just were not able to be super polyed. We just saw Rico win Dortmund. Super poly doesn't do anything against that. Unchained super poly is not very strong. It doesn't help you beat Caesar. Decks that like it used to be good against, for example, like Branded or Despia. I'm not seeing them as often, or Dragon Link was another deck that Super Poly was really good against, but after the ban list, I've seen less and less Dragon Link. So I decided to cut it, but I'm not dead set on not playing it. It's a card that is forever on my list of playable cards. Just at the moment right now, I am not.
Well, since we're running near the end of our time here, I'm going to get to the biggest burning question as to what do you guys think is going to happen, not just to Tearlaments, to the game of YuGiOh post Age of Overlord. How do you guys think that set is going to affect the metagame and the trajectory of YuGiOh going forward?
So I was really looking forward to Age of Overlord, and in a lot of ways I still am. Age of Overlord represents a drastic step forward in power creep that the game hasn't seen since Power of the Elements. And I love power creep. Cards like SP Little Knight, Typhoon, and the new engines like Diabellstar and Horus are just, they're going to really revolutionize, maybe not revolutionize is the right word, but they will drastically change the way YuGiOh is played. And I am very much looking forward to that. It's going to change every single deck, not just Tearlament. My one caveat with Age of Overlord was announced a few days ago, and it's just Ken and Jen, because I hate those cards. Even if their performance is yet to be determined. They may not be as big of a problem as we're making it out to be, but just the fact that these cards exist and were printed is already enough to leave a sour taste in my mouth. Whereas before, I was looking forward to Age of Overlord as Power of the Elements 2.0. Now I'm like, okay, let's wait and see what happens.
Like SP Little Knight, first off, I think is absolutely crazy. Like that is a Link monster on crack. The fact it's a Link 2 as well, and it works off of any extra deck monster, not just a certain one. I think, oh my god. And it's like 2 interruptions in the same card because it can do 2 things the turn that you summon it. It's like Nightmare Unicorn kind of just got power crept. Like now you don't have to discard a card to get to bounce something or remove something off the field. And then like Typhoon being able to just like summon itself like on top of any monster, like basically at the end of your combo, and just say, hey, I bounce another card and sort of like guarantee OTKs. Like I think that's kind of insane. And even Ken and Jen, which I think probably is like yet to be, like as you said, it's yet to be seen how strong they might actually be. But I think the cards themselves are still really strong. And even if they may not impact the meta now, I think at some point we will feel their effects in the metagame. It's crazy because like I remember being so terrified that like because all the Testinas are Aqua and they already had a field spell that once per turn milled one, I was a little scared that, dude, if this Testina support was even like remotely decent, we could have had a Testina Tearlament deck that like could have reinvigorated the game. And then I read all the support and it was just one big sigh of relief because I don't think that's gonna work.
It's interesting to me that we get TCG exclusive archetypes like Testina and Goatee, which are just so laughably incompetent. Then at the same time, the TCG team prints Ken and Jen, and it's like, wow, like you clearly have someone there that wants to print broken cards, but you don't want to make an archetype that is playable. I don't know.
That's kind of my headcanon for why Gate Guardian ended up the way it did. It was like we were in a format where branded and Tearlaments where it was running rampant. It was like we can't have another good fusion deck. we kind of just gotta tone this down a bit. But yeah, you can go ahead.
No, I was gonna say Ken and Jen are gonna be abusable. If not doing well at Indy or Richmond, they're gonna do pretty well in the future. Just being able to break game mechanics and make me do something that I don't want to do, which is playing to talents. Yeah.
Which is great. I love the references with those cards as well, like the references to like the feudal Japanese history, like two humongous warlords that were like rivals for their entire lifetimes, and like so they're just the biggest haters of each other. So that's why it's funny that they summon each other and then they like go off. There is even that new OCG archetype that was revealed last night. It's like a whole bunch of level 3 monsters. I think it's like the next in the Diablo Star lore and stuff like that. And I think like
Riders.
Yeah, I think like when that comes
terrible.
out, I think when that comes out, we might see a little more of it because it's all level 3, right? Like they have a rank 3 that searches like stuff in their engine. I think, as I said, like if we don't feel it now, we will feel it later.
Yeah, just gonna close this up. I think that Tearlaments moving into AGOV, gets a boost. That's what AGOV does. It's just print a lot of generically busted cards, and it gives every deck a boost. And we're kind of, probably leave some of the tier 2 or rogue decks. Some of them maybe in the wayside. It's going to be a great set, and it's going to change deck building moving forward. But I think that it's a good thing for the game because we're going to see the less wide format it gets. You kind of favors a little more technical play as well because you kind of know what to expect a little more. But yeah, Little Knight is the true Prankatrops, to be honest. Because
oh my god,
sometimes Prankatrops and Fenrir they don't always become a 2-for-1. Sometimes it's a 1-for-1. But Little Knight literally is a 2. It's literally a 2-for-1. It's like Judgment of the Summon or something like that. Like it's always gonna trade 2 for 2.
I'm so excited for that card. So excited. I already ordered a quarter century.
damn!
Yeah,
You got that kind of money?
Oh yeah. I mean, no, I don't. But
yeah, that's ego sometimes.
but
You
I
don't have
like
the
to
money, but you'll
pretend I
find it.
do.
wait till you start needing the second one, and you realize that comes up.
I know. Wait till I want to play it in a deck that uses extravagance.
I think this is a perfect note to end the Metacast on. Any closing thoughts you guys have to say about Tearlaments or about the game right now?
Just thank you so much for having me, of course. Ground Game, thank you. And as far as Tearlament goes, just if you never gave the deck a shot back when it was tier 0 because you felt it was toxic, give it a shot now. See how you like it. I encourage everybody to try Tearlament at least once because it was such an amazing deck for me, and I hope that other people have a similar experience. So give it a shot. Keep an open mind, even if you may have a preconceived notion of what it once was.
Yeah, I personally did like Lunalight Tearlament, just, quick note, but I wouldn't want to play it now, just, because there's just too many other decks I want to play. That's the only reason why. Like, there's so many things out of Asia Overlord, and you're going to see more content from us exploring some of those archetypes and stuff. So subscribe, stay tuned, and thank you guys for watching. This has been Nistro, Isaiah, Roark, Ground Game. Stand your ground.
stand your ground.